في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Before I start discussing the continuation of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and continuing over to Surah Yasin, meaning the rest of Surah Yasin, I looked at the AI notes, and while it was pleasant to see, and it had definitely made it, given it more structure, and also there was, I don't know, I felt like some of the things were worded maybe better than what I worded, but I did find some areas where it had not caught on, and so I'd have to edit that before I can, which is what your idea was. I'm just letting you and everyone know that I'll fix the notes, inshallah, and then we can share it. Regarding Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we mentioned ism. We said a few things about that, and I'm not going to reiterate why it's Bismillah, not just Billah. What's the function of the word ism here? It is common to use that. It has become common historically to do that. Oh, the second point, sorry, I wanted to mention is that I wasn't able to, in the time I had, to fix and arrange for the screening of what I want to show when I'm explaining. I'd like to have it on the screen for those who are online and also in person. I wasn't able to make that happen this week. Inshallah, from the next week we will be able to do that as well. So back to Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We explained a few things about ism and how this is something that is common, but when attention is given to not just the meanings of the words are pretty clear. Ism is clear, the ba at the beginning is clear in Arabic, and in other languages they don't use the article ba, or necessarily the equivalent of what in other cases would be ba. For instance, in English there's an in the name of God, and here it's Bismillah. But either way, while the meanings of the words are very clear in terms of what it refers to, what it indicates, we pay closer attention and we realize that there are certain things that we can gather. And we referred people to the recordings of Imam Khomeini's discussion on Surah Al-Hamd. It's known as, in both or in all 5 sessions, I don't think he got past Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. But there are important discussions he has on ism. If anyone wants any further, more extended discussions on that, they can refer to that or those series. There's 2 other names here, as we call them, and Allah calls them names as well. In theology, in Islamic theology, there are other words that are used that I want to say I prefer the word name. In theology or kalam in Islam, amongst the Muslims, I shouldn't say in Islam, amongst the Muslims, the word that is generally used and then translated to English is sifat. Okay, this is sifat of Allah. And that's translated to attributes. And many times the word attribute is used. And I'm not sure if I can say what I'm about to say regarding the Arabic term, if I can say the same regarding the English term, attribute. Now I assume that this is a good, correct equivalent. I apologize, I have an emergency call. Give me 1 second. Assalamu alaikum. What? No, we don't have brisket, yes. I told Taha. Okay, Fiona. Apologies. The word attribute I haven't looked into, so I can't really say anything about that. The word sifat, I do have something regarding. What is that?
Unmute you.
Oh, it hasn't been unmuted there.
No, when you were talking on the phone, I muted.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Are we good now?
You continue, but it's not going to. Let me unmute you. Unmute. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I haven't checked the word attribute in English and look at the details of the definition of that word. But I can say this as a fact in Arabic. The word sifat is something that the Quran seems to have an issue with. There are narrations that have issues with that word. Sifa, again, I'm going to put aside the word attribute. I'm going to discuss the concept and explain what the concept, the word in Arabic is, and talk about why that's not a good word for us to use. In theology it is used, and these are scholars. However, I think that should not be used, and I'll explain why I think that should not be used. Sifa means to describe. Okay, a description. An adjective, for example, that is descriptive in linguistics or in the study of language and grammar, an adjective is called a sifa or a na'at. Those two words in Arabic are synonymous, sifa and na'at. So you're describing something. The Quran denies God to be able to be described. The narrations deny for God to be able to be described. One of the narrations related to this is the narration that talks about what Allahu Akbar means. Allahu Akbar, literally the words are clear. It says that God is greater. Okay. Greater than who or greater than what? And there's a lot to say about that. I don't want to get into that. But the narration says God is greater to be described, greater than to be described. Allahu Akbaru and Yusuf, the narration says. Yusuf is the verb, it's a passive verb. He is greater than to be described. It's the passive current tense verb from the root sifa. So it's the exact same word. It says God is greater than there to be a sifa of His. Okay. So names are not descriptions. If you go back to what we talked about last week, and maybe I'll not reiterate, but say a little something, allude to it. A name is not descriptive. It points toward the infinite, again, meaning limitless. This is not a description. It's removing descriptions. When you say infinite, there is nothing finite for you to put within any limits and say this is what defines this being. Okay? As soon as you describe something, you are putting limits on that. That's what the word definition means. You define the boundaries of something. If there's no boundaries, there's no definition. If God is infinite, which He is, then there is no boundaries. And the word infinite itself is not a boundary. It's explaining that there are no boundaries. Okay? It's a word for us to understand that something does not have boundaries in any shape or form. A description works based off of the definition of something, the boundaries of something. God denies in the Quran in many ways. In the ahadith, I mentioned one of the narrations that denies the descriptability, if that's a word, for God to be able to be described. Okay. A sifa is a description. So to use the word sifa to refer to Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, or any name of God is a mistake, to put it lightly. And the reason why I say to put it lightly is because if you pay attention to what that means, it's pretty wrong. Pretty wrong to do that, but because it's not intentional, we call it a mistake. So I think we should avoid calling, as theologians have called these words, as names. He is not defined, he does not have definition, he does not have descriptions. He is limitless, and that's what that means. Anything that has to do with a definition, description, has everything to do with names. Okay. Which means a thing, and this is that short little explanation again about the word name. Name refers to a thing that has no purpose but to refer to something else. It has nothing of itself. The word Muhammad, none of that word has any purpose but to refer to a person that carries that name. That's the only purpose that word has. That's the only thing about it. There's nothing beyond that this word has. A name, not in linguistics, not in the limited context of language, in the broader context of existence, things that exist are names of Allah. Okay, so Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, these are names of Allah. Names now are different types. Okay, some of the names are descriptive. Okay, they're not names that are a thing. If you follow that line of thought where anything that exists has an element of being ism of Allah, and therefore asma of Allah are limitless, because the beings that God has created don't have a limit. They're constantly expanding. So there's infinite names. Maybe not at the same time. I can't really say yes or no to that, but there isn't a finite number of names that Allah has, as He is infinite, and there are infinite names that He can have, as He can have infinite creations. Some names, sometimes when we say name, it refers to these. For example, when the names of the Ahlul Bayt are referred to as Asma of Allah, which is a correct statement. Not the names of the Ahlul, it's not the word Muhammad. Muhammad himself, the person, sallallahu alayhi wa alih. Fatimatu Zahra, salawatullah alayha. Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayh. These are names of God, profound names of God, as everything, as we said, based on that interpretation or that understanding of the word is, everything is a name of God. These things which are names of God are beings. Okay. Then we have names of Allah that are descriptive. They don't refer to a particular existence, but they are also not descriptions of God, because we said it is not possible to define God. Yes?
Can I have questions? Some scholars I've heard say that you should not name somebody like Razak because this is Allah's name. You should name Abdul Razak. Is that when you say that these Fatima, Zahra, Salamullah, Ali ibn Abi Talib, these are the names of the Allah? Mm-hmm. First, do you agree with the first statement, or if so, are these contradiction?
So these are two different. So let me repeat the question for people who are online. The question is, I said the Ahlul Bayt are names of Allah, and then the question came up that there's an idea about certain names not being permissible, not being allowed, or being discouraged to be used for people like Razzaq or Rahim or other names that are considered to be names of God, and they are only names of God, as the concept goes, the idea goes.
Instead of the Abdul Razzaq.
And so if we want to name someone a name that has Ar-Razzaq, we should call them Abdul Razzaq, not Ar-Razzaq, because they don't provide sustenance. They are the abd, the slave of the creation of the one who provides sustenance, basically. So those are two very different ideas. Okay. What you're talking about has to do with names that have words, basically, words. And these words have meanings in language. And in language, in the context of language, a word's meaning, there only being someone, like it's a lie to call, let me put it in these words, it's a lie to call someone who does not provide sustenance the one who provides sustenance. Okay, so Razzaq means a person who provides a lot of sustenance. Okay, that's literally what the word means. If you call a human being that does not provide any sustenance Razzaq, that's just a lie. So shouldn't do that. Now, I haven't seen a ruling from any marja, I don't recall a ruling from any marja that says you're not allowed to, like it's haram, you've committed a sin if you put that name on your child or you call someone that. It's just a blatant lie to mean that someone is actually Razzaq. If you mean it metaphorically, if you mean it some other way, but perhaps there's a way of making it make sense. So that's one idea, and I don't, as I said, I haven't seen a fatwa on that. I've heard about it. I don't have a view on that. I don't know. I would have to check it to see if there's any legitimate reason to say that we're not allowed to use those names for people. But saying that the Ahlul Bayt are names of God, as we said, is not something that is limited to the Ahlul Bayt. Everything is a name of Allah. If you refer to last week's session, we said when you say Bismillah, you're referring to everything. Like this whole process of this beginning is using Ism of Allah. That includes the person who's reciting it. Okay, Ism is a very broad term existentially, not in language. This meaning of it is not the meaning of the word in the context of language, but rather the meaning of the word in the context of reality. Okay, name in the context of reality doesn't refer to the names we use for an individual. It refers to the idea that every being is a name in that sense of God. Okay, meaning it has the function of name in language, but in reality. Okay, the function of name in language is for people that use language to think and to converse and to communicate, to use that word to refer to a being. In the context of existence, in reality, in the context of reality, the existence of something that has nothing of itself has no function but reflecting the one who created it. Okay, in that sense, they are the name. So these are two very different ideas. They're not really related. They're not, although the word name definitely brings that question up, but I want to say that these are two very separate discussions. They're not related. And I don't have, for the other question, I don't have a view on whether or not it's allowed to use those. It makes sense not to use them, but are we allowed? If somebody says, well, I know it, I'm not meaning it in the literal sense, but I just like that name, I just want to use it. Like, is there anything haram about using it? I don't know. I would have to check. I haven't seen a fatwa from the Maraja. I don't recall reading anywhere a fatwa from any Marja on that topic, and I haven't done any independent research on that topic myself. So we were saying that names in this, in the sense that we're using it in the context of reality, names of God, they are two types when we're referring to names that are one way or another referring to God. One of the types of names are going to be descriptive without being descriptions of God. Okay? What are they descriptions of then if they are descriptive and they are related to God? Meaning, when I say they're descriptive, we're in a sense back in the context of language, because description is language, it's not reality. Okay? A word having a meaning in language is in the context of language. We're back in the context of language. We're not talking about the description of a reality, of a being, of what it reflects. We're talking about a word having a meaning, and that meaning being descriptive. Yet it's the name of God in a similar sense. Similar. What does this refer to? This, the scholars of theology have called Asma'ul Sifat, Asma'ul Fi'l or Sifatul Fi'l. And I prefer Asma again. Asma means names as opposed to Sifat, which means description. There is an idea of description in the meaning of the word, but it's a name that's... so what is this a description of? Let me stop repeating the idea of, ism and sifa, which one we prefer. Asma'ul fi'l or sifatul fi'l are said to be descriptions of God's actions, not God himself. He cannot be defined, okay? But the creation, any creation of God, is finite and limited. The relationship between God and that one creation or multitudes of creations, how he is toward that creation, is not a description of God. It's a description related to what the being, the creation, the abd, the slave receives from God, which is finite at any given time. So it's not the description of God, it's the description of the relationship that God has with his creation. Rahman and Rahim are such. Okay. Rahman, Rahim, Rab, Razzaq, Kareem, all these words that are descriptive, that have meaning. It's not a being. It's not like Muhammad, the person, being the name of God, but words that carry meanings in the Quran. All of these are words with meaning that are descriptive. They describe God's relationship with his creation, not God himself. He cannot be defined. Therefore, they are ism of Allah, not sifat of Allah. They are sifat of, or description of, the relationship of God with his creation. So now that we've clarified that, let's talk specifically about the two that we have here in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You have ar-Rahman and you have ar-Rahim. So the first thing, based on the previous explanation we gave, is that ar-Rahman has a meaning related to how God treats his creation. God's relationship based on how he tells us the relationship is. Okay. What is the relationship? Both of these words have to do with rahmah. The first one, I think some of us at least have heard, maybe many of us have heard, and maybe this is nothing new that I'm mentioning. On the second one, we're going to have something that, for some people at least, it's going to be new. Because it's different. It's a different understanding. Rahman is a particular word form in Arabic, and it has a particular meaning. The root of Rahman and Rahim is the same. Ra, Ha, Mim, those three letters are the root of the word Rahman and Rahim. And mercy is the core meaning and essence, or compassion, if you like using that word. Beneficent or beneficence, perhaps, if you're... and I'm not sure... See, in order to say what the perfect equivalent is, you need to do a lot of research in both languages to understand the core meaning of both languages and the usage of them, and to see which one is exactly the same. And I haven't done that research. I'm relying on most translations of the Quran say either the beneficent, the merciful, or the compassionate, the merciful. These are, so mercy is one, compassion and beneficence are the other two. and I'm not sure which one is the best. But in Arabic, Rahman and Rahim, they have the same root meaning and the same root word. The difference is the word form, okay, that they are in. That's how Arabic works. You have a root that goes into different forms, and that form has a meaning. Okay. The meaning of the form fa'lan, which is what Rahman is in, that form, the word form, refers to a description, an adjective, if you will, that describes a certain property being there consistently. Okay? So if you have someone, for example, that's sometimes merciful and sometimes non-merciful, if you have someone when they are on their good side, they are merciful, when you get them on their bad side, they're very non-merciful, you cannot call them Rahman. Okay? Because they're not consistently with the quality of Rahmah. They don't have that quality consistently. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Again, this is a description of a relationship between not God in one of His creation, but God in His creation in its entirety. Ar-Rahman. Okay. God toward whatever He has created, it's consistently supposed to be. That's what the word form means. Okay. The word form means He's consistently with that attribute. If you have a person that has the quality of being merciful, but it's not always there. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're talking now, I want to use something a little more colloquial, and so I'm not talking about God here. Some people can be very nice to you, and they can be jerks at times. Okay, you can't call that person Rahman. Okay, the word doesn't mean that. Now you may call them that because not that specific individual. Let me use a better example. You can never call someone like Trump merciful at all. Not only Rahman, you cannot call someone like that merciful at all. You don't find traces of mercy in this person toward even his children, I don't think, toward his wife. There's no sign of any of that. He's very selfish. All he cares about is himself. All right. Then you have people that are nice at times toward some people, at least. Then you have people that are a little more compassionate toward people, a little more thoughtful, and they go out of their way to be nice and kind to people. Then you start thinking of words like that. Okay, this guy is very compassionate, or he's always compassionate, or he's always this. Like whatever word you like to use referring to the same idea. When we use it in the context of a human being, we use it where it's not always. It's kind of an exaggeration, right? But the word means that. I'm trying to distinguish between these two ideas. The word means one thing, and then we use it in cases in our human context outside of the Quran, because language is not something that was created in the Quran. It's something that exists already. The word Rahman existed in Arabic. If you call someone Rahman, it would mean you're saying they are consistently compassionate. They're consistently merciful. If you do use it for a human being, well, that is not something that, at least in our minds, we can comprehend someone that we can find that is entirely merciful. So we use a word that means that for someone who is not like that, because we are emphasizing how frequently or how consistently we see that quality compared to others who don't have it. It's so much that we're like, this guy's always, like they say, this guy has always got a smile on his face. Really? He's always got a smile on his face? No, they don't. Okay? But when you say that, you mean that a lot of times, but it's worded as always. Okay? That's an example, I think, that helps us understand this word. So the word means one thing. It is used in a case where it doesn't actually mean that literally. Regarding God and the Quran, we've got to understand God doesn't kid and He doesn't use these words in that way. The word means always, consistently, and God emphasizes the usage of this word in many cases of the Quran. When we look at examples, I'll mention one in this context. It's clear He's emphasizing the literal meaning of the word Ar-Rahman. So, with that, it means God's relationship with His creation is consistently merciful, consistently compassionate, okay? Consistently beneficent, okay? Blessing His. This sounds all nice and dandy until you start thinking about, what about floods? What about it? Because, side note here, that is His creation, and it doesn't do anything without His will. So the flood is God causing it. The earthquakes are caused by God. Famine is caused by Allah. Malnutrition is that disease. COVID-19, whether it was done in a lab or not, is God's doing, literally. That's what all the verses of the Quran, when we get to them, we'll get to. Wars that happen, the war that we are still somewhat in the midst of, like in ways definitely in the midst of, what Israel is doing to southern Lebanon and in Gaza and the West Bank, all these aggressions, all these atrocities, all these killings, okay, are literally, based on the Quran, beyond a shadow of a doubt, something that God does. Without the will of God, it would never, ever happen. Okay. And then add to that other things. Add to that the punishment of what we understand to be eternal, although I dispute that. When we get to it, we'll discuss that. But the common understanding amongst Muslims from the Quran is that the punishment of the bad deeds of kuffar, at least, is eternal. Okay. If that is the case, then where's the compassion in that? Where's the beneficence in that? Where is the, forget my description. Doesn't God say, like, you can disguise this, maybe one could say. You can disguise this for me and say, oh, there's something in it. But what about God? He says, Shadidul Iqab. Okay? He is severe in punishment. How can punishment be also referred to as compassion and mercy? He says that غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. Maghdub, everyone knows this. We're not discussing Surah Al-Ham, but everybody's familiar with Surah Al-Ham. We ask for God to guide us to the right path, the path of those that He has blessed, and not those that His wrath has been unleashed on. That's not my word. That's not somebody else's word. That is God's word in the Quran. So God says He unleashes His wrath on a people. Okay? How is wrath, how can you reconcile between unleashing your wrath and compassion? So you compassionately unleash your wrath? Is that how this works? Is that what we're saying? And the answer is yes, that's exactly what we're saying. And we'll have to reconcile at some point. This is not the time that I want to do that and discuss this topic elaborately. I'm putting it out, though, that when God uses a word, He means that word. Okay. He doesn't mean it in a different way. He doesn't mean it in an ambiguous way. He doesn't mean it that, oh, I say I'm consistently compassionate, I'm consistently merciful, but what I mean is that sometimes, and you don't know when that is. So I could do whatever God has said, and then God says, well, this is not one of the times that I want to be compassionate. So screw you, excuse my language, and I'm going to treat you in this way. No. Okay. No. He is very clear with what he says. He uses words that have meanings. He doesn't use them in the way we use them, because we understand the person we use this word toward can't be consistently one way or another. But God can be consistently one way or another. And when he uses a word that has that meaning, unless he puts a disclaimer there, he puts a different word there to tell us that it's different than what the word actually means, he makes an exception or a few exceptions, then that's when we can say, all right, then there's an exception or whatever. Otherwise, besides that, we cannot say, well, human beings use this word while it means that toward each other in this non-literal way. Maybe God meant it in a non-literal way as well. No. He needs to indicate that, or that needs to be indicated with something clear. He does not. Therefore, the word Ar-Rahman means that. So how does that work is not something we're going to discuss right now. We're going to leave that, park that in your mind for another discussion when we have another verse that talks about some of those ideas. In Surah Yasin, we will have times where that topic comes up, and I'm going to explain how that works. But right now we're saying that's what God says. Ar-Rahman literally means that. I said that there are verses of the Quran that make it even more clear besides the word Ar-Rahman in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that makes it clear what he means is not just the word or loosely or things like that. He emphasizes the meaning of the word, including the consistency of it. In Surah Taha, God says in the first few verses, I forget what number it is, maybe 7 or so, you can look it up. It says, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. Okay. The word Ar-Rahman, which we just talked about, ala al-arsh istawa. Okay. Ala, upon. Al-arsh, the throne. Istawa is sitting. Okay. Now, I don't want to talk about what a throne is exactly, as we have verses about that, and we have a hadith about that, and the relationship between that and the infinite God that cannot be described, and so on and so forth. I don't want to get into that topic. I just want to very quickly get through this idea that when God says the Rahman is sitting on the throne, he's emphasizing, out of all the names that he has, the descriptive ones especially, when he wants to talk about who's in control, he stresses on the idea of consistent mercy. Okay. Look, you don't have a God that is, you don't get him on the wrong side. Whatever happens, remember, the one in charge is not just Allah. Okay, that's a word that includes all the names of Allah. It refers to the infinite being, similar to the word infinite. The usage of the word infinite. He says Ar-Rahman. What Rahma? How does Rahma look like? What Rahma in what context? Just broadly. He is constantly and consistently toward all his creation compassionate. Okay. That's the emphasis, that's the whole point of that verse. There's nothing other than that you can interpret that verse as. If Ar-Rahman would mean sometimes he is Rahman, then the whole point of that verse is lost. He's emphasizing, look, the one in control, the authority that controls everything, is the all-merciful. Okay. The all-merciful. So, when God begins His surahs in the Quran, He uses two descriptive names of His. One, it's Ar-Rahman. It's very important for us to remember this, see the frequency of the usage of that, the emphasis. You're told to begin your things with this. It's not just an idea of repeating words. Remind yourself the name of Ar-Rahman. Remind ourselves the name of Ar-Rahman. In the hardest conditions that we're in, remember, He's in control and He is Ar-Rahman. I can't see the Rahmah in this, but know for a fact that this is Rahmah. Okay. From God's perspective, this is Rahmah. Not from God's perspective, is like, oh, in the way we say, like, from my perspective, it's like this. The other guy is receiving hell and it's so difficult and whatever, like from my perspective. So it's all subjective. I think of it in this way. No, it's objectively rahmah. It is not seen. One small thing about that, because I know a lot of questions are in people's minds about that. We said we're going to discuss it some other time. I encourage everybody to refer to the stories in Surah Al-Kahf, particularly the story of Prophet Musa and the man that was granted knowledge that Musa didn't have. The three stories of damaging the ship, the boat, ship, whatever it was, killing the young boy, and reconstructing a falling wall. Okay, that story, read it and see how it was very evident from our perspective, with our lack of knowledge, with our limited knowledge of all the conditions, all the different elements that are involved in everything there in those stories. Not just our perspective. Musa, as a prophet, objects to something that he knows God has told this man to do. And then God later explains an element amongst many other elements that were unknown to Musa, to explain that something that looked so wrong superficially was so right if you knew everything that was there. Let's acknowledge our judgment of something being terrible and non-merciful is based on inadequate information of whatever person, including ourselves, in whatever context. Okay.
So would this also apply, like, to the tragedy of Karbala? And, like,
absolutely.
Like when she told Yazid, everything I see is beauty.
That's a very good way of talking about this whole idea, where Bibi Zainab Bibi Zainab is crying. She's in pain. So the brother mentioned, the example of Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. It's a very good way of talking about how a person is able to have both of these. You're able to experience pain, you're able to experience grief, you're able to cry. At the very same time, when the topic of God's relationship with all of this is brought up without hesitation and genuinely, this idea in her mind and her heart is that it's all beautiful. While I'm grieving, I'm experiencing grief, sadness, sorrow, shedding tears. At the very same time, it's clear to me whatever happened and what I'm seeing right now is nothing but jameel. Okay, nothing but beautiful. The grief, let me put it also in this way. The grief and sorrow and tears is part of that beauty and part of that rahmah. Okay. Again, I want to reiterate that the reason why we don't follow that, we don't pick up on that, is because we are inadequate in our information of everything. Right? We only see things very, very partially. And we don't acknowledge that our knowledge is partial. Okay, we don't realize our understanding of whatever circumstance or condition we're in is inadequate and partial understanding. So with that, I think I'm done with Ar-Rahman. What I'd like to conclude this session with very briefly is Ar-Rahim, because Ar-Rahim is a little less complicated after we've already set the foundations for the names and the descriptive names of God. The difference between Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim is that Ar-Rahman refers to, that form refers to the consistency and how it's consistent. It's always, it's not, there's not an instance of this person's behavior that is without the element of mercy. Rahim is a form factor, a word form in Arabic that refers to abundance. It refers to frequency, okay? It refers to, like, if I were to use abundantly something. If we say, like, he's abundantly merciful, let's say in this context. He is very merciful, okay? So while he's consistently merciful, he's also very merciful, okay? Not only is he consistently and constantly toward all his creation have the relationship of compassion and beneficence and mercy, being merciful, but there's an abundance of that. There's a lot of that. And when you say a lot and very or abundance, all of these words need to be understood to be in the context of, because this is a name, descriptive name of God, okay? It's describing his relationship with people. So that abundance and that frequency, that I don't know, I can't think of another word because I feel these words are a little inadequate, but I can't think of a better word. We don't set a limit on that. Infinitely abundant, okay? Infinitely a lot, not a small amount. So his rahmah toward his creation is not just a little bit of rahmah, a little bit of compassion toward one person at a time. It's consistent always, and it's a lot. And put those two, combine those two, it's consistently very merciful. Okay. He's consistently merciful and very merciful. What I would end this, very is pretty clear, and I mean, we can go on discussing examples, but I think in terms of the word, it doesn't need any further explanation. What I do like to say is that some have suggested that the word Ar-Rahman is a descriptive name, or a name that is descriptive, and it refers to the general mercy of God, they call it. That is all-inclusive, and you can understand how that makes sense based on the explanation I gave. God is consistently merciful, so he is merciful toward kuffar, toward mu'mineen, toward beings, everyone, everything, Iblis included. And that is something we said, there's nothing wrong with this explanation. Then they say that the Rahim descriptive name refers to God's relationship with believers only. Okay. So God is very merciful only toward the believers. And it seems like they believe that God is not very merciful toward non-believers. And they have this whole discussion. They say the rahmah of the Rahmaniyya rahmah of God and the Rahimiyya rahmah of God. I want to say I have found this to be completely baseless. In fact, it goes against the very verse of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? Because this is not being used in any context. It's just referring to Ar-Rahim. The word has nothing limiting. When you limit it to a certain context, it conflicts with putting these two words together. Okay, because it means he's not consistently very merciful. He's consistently merciful, but not consistently very merciful. If you're a mu'min, he's consistently merciful and he's very merciful, but he's not consistently very merciful. He's only very merciful toward mu'mineen. That also includes other beings, because mu'min and kafir are in the context of the human being. So he's not consistently merciful toward his other creations, toward angels that are not human beings. They don't have mu'min and kafir. Okay? Jinn and ins have mu'min and kafir. So amongst these two, this category receives the rahimiyya, rahmah of God, the other category doesn't. So you are putting all these restrictions on the word rahim, which the word itself doesn't have, and any of the verses, because there's a few perhaps that they have used. For example, I can think of one that I haven't seen them use it, but I would assume this would be one of them. In Surah Al-Ahzab, God says, وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا. And verily, or in God has been, not is now, has been, meaning that's always how he is toward the mu'mineen rahim. There's a common saying in logic, like, look, if I establish something, I'm not denying something else. I'm emphasizing the rahimiyya here. He doesn't say, I'm only rahim toward the mu'mineen. He says, toward the mu'mineen, I've always been rahim. He's not saying, I'm always rahim only to the mu'mineen. There's nothing there that indicates that whatsoever. Ar-Rahim means abundantly merciful or compassionate. And that's exactly how it should be taken. There is no evidence whatsoever that says God is not abundantly merciful toward non-mu'mineen. He emphasizes for the mu'mineen that he is merciful toward them. And they are receptive to the idea. Kuffar are creations of God that are not receptive in the context of ideas and understanding. They are not receptive to that. Okay. But doesn't change the fact that God is abundantly merciful, period, without a limit, without any restrictions, without any limitations on Ar-Rahim. So,
there's a word of very kind towards the mu'mineen, Wakana Rahim, and the ayat you just recited.
yes.
But it doesn't mean that he will always Rahim towards the mu'mineen. If we flip the ayah, does it mean he was not always Rahim towards the non-believers?
No, you can't see. The verse simply says this. He has been very merciful toward the mu'mineen. Okay. Now, based off of that, how can you say this means it's in any way limited toward to mu'mineen and not therefore non-mu'mineen? He is simply stating the fact that he has been merciful, very merciful toward the mu'mineen. He is not, with this statement, there's no indicator in this statement that he's denying the abundance of mercy toward the non-mu'mineen. Okay, there's nothing there. He's addressing the mu'mineen, and he is saying that he has always been very merciful toward the mu'mineen. For the mu'mineen who are receptive to the idea to receive that mercy. Look, when you understand, if you're a believer, because disbelievers function differently. Okay, they're designed to function differently. That's when we get to verses. This is a very, very difficult subject to talk about. The most difficult concept in the Quran that we're going to have to deal with is tawheed in the context of disbelievers, non-believers. Human will, especially in the case of sin and disbelief. Okay, God's relationship there. Okay, with that creation. The disbeliever is created in a way where they don't enjoy feeling God being merciful toward them, at least in this, while they are kafir. That's just how it is. Okay? But a believer who loves God, when they hear that, when a believer hears God is very compassionate toward, it just melts your heart. Okay? It has that effect. And that itself is a blessing. That's what the verse states. Does it state? Is there any logical conclusion we can reach that denies this? Again, I would refer to you to what in the Hausa they say is, I don't know what the origin of it, they call it the discipline of logic, okay, mantiq. And I believe it's Greek, the origin of it is Greek. And I'm not saying to take that as an authority. It made sense, I'm presenting this, it has to do with language, I think it's pretty clear. When you establish something, you are establishing that point, you're declaring that point. If you want to deny something, you would need to indicate that. The denial of the abundance of mercy toward non-believers is not a meaning that can be extracted from establishing abundance of mercy toward believers. Okay, that's what I'm simply suggesting. If you have cases where the Quran uses Rahim and there's no indication that it's limited to one creation, one type of creation in any way, shape, or form, and then you have cases where the same word is emphasized in a particular context, you can't use those particular cases to say that generally when the word is used, it's limited to that and it is denied from others. So I'm saying that is not sound logic. Okay, the word has an all-inclusive meaning. There's no indication in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and plenty of other sentences in the Quran where it's used that it's limited to anything. In certain contexts, it doesn't limit